Hey y'all, just wanted to come to you in an overview video of how I start my wireframes off and maybe how I approach wireframes from the start as we begin to sketch them out. I know it's a little different angle, but I wanted to try maybe to get the best shot here of what I'm going to be sketching out and just kind of provide some feedback along the way. So typically what I have to get started is I've just got just a typical number 2 pencil. I like the mechanical pencils just because it's easier. I don't have to, sharpen it, but just got a typical mechanical pencil here just to help rough some things out on the page before I kind of refine it a little bit. This is by far my favorite pencil. Once you get into the world of wireframing, I have colleagues who have a lot of different specific markers they use, and I love that. That's just not how I typically do it, but I just have a Bic pen, just a classic Bic pen, and then I've also got kind of a quick drying highlighter just to annotate and help kind of highlight some spaces on the page. I'm using just kind of classic computer paper. I don't have a sketchbook handy, but if you've got a sketchbook, that's a great place to start. If you have even kind of a grid lined sketchbook, similar to how this ruler has it, that's even better. That really helps you kind of get some really specific angles and dimensions to your prototype. But all I've got is this 8.5 by 11 right now, and that's perfectly fine to get started. And then I've also got just a straight edge or a ruler. So that's typically kind of how I start. I've also got a jar full of pens that I can choose from if I wanted to get maybe a little bit more detailed, and also a cup of coffee. That's always helpful too. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly remove some of these. And what I typically do is just start here on the left hand side of my paper and rough out maybe what the dimensions of this UI are going to be. And so maybe kind of sneak peek to jump ahead in this a little bit as I begin to lay out my desktop view. Our dimensions for this site are going to be 1366 wide, 1366 pixels, so 1366 pixels wide by 768 pixels tall. And so just doing some quick research, that was about the second most popular screen resolution in 2020, and that's pretty typical. You think maybe of a standard laptop size is about that. And so that's what we're going to do for these dimensions. And what's also really nice about it is it's one of the presets of Adobe XD. And so you get to kind of just use what they have out of the box. And so this is maybe typically maybe a long page. And so the site obviously isn't one screen this big. And so what I like to do is come in here and indicate where the fold line is going to be. And so it's probably been a while since you picked up a newspaper, but this is kind of a classic term that's been used in the web industry, above the fold versus below the fold. And so that's kind of a classic way to describe the content that appears above kind of the laptop's breakpoint on the bottom versus the content that appears below that breakpoint. In the same way you would expect, a classic newspaper where what appears on that front cover would be above the fold, and as you flip it over or unfold it, that content that's below the fold is typically a little less important. And so you'll see a lot of sites or a lot of organizations dedicate prime real estate up here at the very top to the content that appears above the fold. And so how I like to do that or to showcase that is to think about where that breakpoint is going to be. And so I know my height based off of the requirements is going to be 768 pixels tall by 1366 pixels wide. And so I'll just come down here and I'll just draw some dashes to indicate where that fold line is going to be. And that just gives me an idea of maybe where roughly that content is going to be. Now, it's really difficult for you to get kind of spot on where that's going to be, but you can get a rough estimate of that. And so I just like to indicate that this is where the fold line is going to be here, left and right. And that's so I can have a little conversation with my client to say, what do we want to dedicate above the fold versus what might be something that we can show below the fold. And so from here, I'm just going to go ahead and note, 1760 or 768 pixels tall, 1366 pixels wide, and then begin to maybe rough out where I want my content to appear. Now, you can get as detailed or as loose as you want in these. We're going to talk a little bit about grids later, but I'll maybe just like to rough in maybe some grid lines or some columns. That way I can maybe structure this a little bit better. And so I'm just going to rough out maybe 4 columns here. And so just really lightly maybe showcase that. And then, we'll get into columns and maybe their use cases a little later in the course, and grid structures, I think, as we dive into prototypes themselves. You don't typically have to worry about it too much within wireframing, but it's good to have an idea maybe how much width you have, how much real estate you have to work with within your wireframe. And so here we go. I have just a basic layout, and you might be able to see it here. I've got 1366 pixels tall, 768. This is a little difficult to do here. 768 pixels tall by 1366 pixels wide. And then I have my fold line indicated. I have some really light column markers that you can see there as well. So as I start thinking about maybe how this lays out, the new handles homepage, maybe I want to place their logo in the top left, and I'll just rough in that logo. And then I'm going to go back and annotate this hero section real quick as we get started, just to kind of show you a brief demo. The navigation, I think I want to have it appear on the right-hand side, kind of a traditional spot for the nav. There's nothing really too extra about this site or too experimental that I want to do. And so I'm just going to keep it classic and maybe keep the navigation on the right-hand side. And then also, show the social media icons here as well. So here at the very top of the page, I've got my nav structured. I've got the logo. I've got some navigation items here on the right-hand side with maybe some social icons as well. As I get started here, like I said, this is prime real estate up top, and so I'll probably have a headline here. Just to, not quite sure what that headline is going to be yet. I might use that locally, local homemade ice cream made fresh daily for over 80 years that I've kicked around. Just something at the very top that would give the user a general idea of what to expect from this business or from this company. Now, your site might look totally different. It might be that your headline is centered. It might be that you have a couple products that are showcased here at the very top. Again, that's just going to depend on what your site is and what you're trying to sell or showcase on your new website. For me, on the handles website, I think just something simple up top with a call to action is going to be helpful. And I'll probably include a button down here as well in the hero. Again, not sure what that's going to look like, but just going to note that here as a button. On the right hand side, I think what would be great is to counterbalance that with a photo. And so while a photo is really difficult to showcase here in wireframes, you might just rough in kind of just some squiggly lines or whatever. You can even get a little bit more detailed and actually draw out. Maybe this is actually going to be an ice cream cone that I want to showcase here. That's my my best ice cream cone that I can do. But maybe I want to showcase what I'm actually selling here on the right hand side. Now, one thing I noted before is this fold line that you see here. One of the things I like to do, and again, it's going to depend on what your product is, what you're trying to sell, or maybe what business you're actually designing for. But one of the things I like to consider is this is the user's first impression when you come to this site, this very top hero space. And so what I do, up there is critical. Also, what I do to kind of break that fold is critical too. Because if a user just comes to this first section and it's very, thorough and detailed and that's all they see, there might not be anything that entices them to scroll down the page. And so I like to naturally break this fold. Again, it's just something that I've developed over time. Like any type of art or design, people are going to come up with their own techniques, their own kind of niche or their own style as they continue to develop in their career. So this is just something that I've done for a while is just how do I break this fold so that I naturally draw the user down the page. And again, I may be thinking about the inspiration pieces that I included on my mood board as well that maybe help guide what I do here. And so what I'm going to do here is just maybe create three large kind of call to action spaces here where I can promote content and entice the user to scroll down the page. Now I just have them barely kind of peeking above that fold line, just to give the user enough to say, oh, there's more that is appearing below this page. And so I'm just going to rough in, kind of those three boxes. Again, don't know really what's going to be inside of those boxes right now, but just giving myself enough understanding for the client, kind of get a judgment call on what we're designing or what the intent is for this site. And so I'm just going to draw this real quick, and I'm going to stop here and maybe go over a little bit of some of the annotations that I'm going to make on this site. And of course, I've talked through it a little bit as we've been recording the video, but here I've got the skeleton of my new Handles homemade ice cream website here. And so I've got just, my logo at the very top. I've got some nav items. I've got my attempt to draw an ice cream cone here. I've got maybe a headline with with a button here as a call to action. And then you can see I'm just breaking the fold slightly to entice the user to scroll down the page. And so just maybe three features here. I think this is dried off a little bit. This ink is not wet anymore. But what I might do is I might go in here and say, might highlight, where are my call to action buttons going to be at? And so I might just quickly kind of highlight those in blue. Again, everybody's going to have their own technique, their own style of the way that they go about this. For me, I just like to highlight where the calls to action are, where those buttons are, so the user or so that the customer has an idea of maybe where we're going to highlight certain things down the page. I'm also just going to highlight, some things that I want to talk about from the client's perspective here. So I'm just going to make some notes that I'm going to annotate along the way. And here, so I have 5 things that I want to annotate. So you can see here I've got some 5 areas that I want to annotate. I've got number 1, I'm going to talk a little bit about the nav. Number 2, the logo. Number 2, I'm going to talk about the nav. Number 3, I'm going to annotate kind of what to expect here on the left-hand side of the hero space. Number 4, I might jot down some ideas of what to expect or maybe what I want to do in this space. Number 5, I want to talk a little bit about this space down here. Now, as you design down the page, your annotations are going to grow. There's no count that I'm asking you to do as far as the annotations go, but the things that you want to describe or provide context to on your wireframe are the things that I would expect you to annotate here as well. So I've got my yellow highlighter, and I'm just going to quickly maybe highlight this just so they're highlighted and I can have a conversation maybe a little easier and quicker with the client as I describe for them and talk through some of the wireframes with them. So I'm going to annotate here on the right hand side, and we'll get started with some annotations. And so I've got annotation number 1. I'm just going to describe this as the logo, the Handles logo. Number 2, I'm going to describe it as the navigation plus social icons. Number 3, I'm going to say, catchy headline and CTA or call to action. I'm going to have the primary button is highlighted there. Number 4, I'm going to say this should be a hero image that's friendly and not staged. So just enough to describe maybe what that's going to be. I want it to be a hero image that's friendly, not staged, that provides that kind of vibe that I want to create on the new website. And then number 5, I'm just going to note that this is kind of a featured spotlight with 3 areas peaking above the fold. So there you have it. I've got just the start of my wireframes. Now, I've asked you to do 6 of these. So this is just my dashboard or my home page. And so I'm going to just note that at the very top. This is my home page. And so I'll have my home page. I'll have an interior page, same way. I'll have a contact page as well, or whatever your tertiary page is going to be. And then additionally, I'm going to have the mobile view for my home page, interior page, and contact, or whatever that third page is for you based on your site. So for this project, you're going to do this all the way through from your header to your footer, all the way down at the very bottom, and multiply that by 6. So 3 for desktop and 3 for mobile. And in another video, I'll share with you maybe how I take my my wireframes on paper and import them into Adobe XD and generate them as a PDF that I can demonstrate and preview to a client. So hope this was helpful. I've just got my rough start to this. I'll continue to build this out and share maybe a finalized video with everything that I've got in another video here again. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.